And that, class, is why you should never, under any circumstances, attempt to probe the mind of a Zorblaxian without proper shielding. Their natural psychic defenses are quite explosive. Professor Zilthrop's tentacles waved dramatically as he finished his lecture, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with barely contained excitement. The assembled students, a motley crew of various alien species from across the galaxy, collectively shuddered at the mental image of cerebral fireworks. All except one. In the back of the classroom, a stocky figure slouched in a chair clearly too small for his frame. He raised a meaty hand, managing to look bored and confused simultaneously, a uniquely human talent. "Yeah. Quick question, Teach," the human drawled. "What the hell are we even doing here?" A ripple of gasps and horrified squeaks ran through the classroom. One particularly sensitive Quartzian student promptly fainted, their crystalline form tinkling musically as they hit the floor. Professor Zilthrop's eye stalks swiveled to focus on the impertinent human. "Ah, Mr. Davidson. So kind of you to grace us with your unique perspective." The sarcasm in his voice could have etched glass. "Perhaps you'd care to elaborate on your query." Dave Davidson, his parents weren't exactly creative, leaned forward, his chair creaking ominously. "Look, I get that this is some kind of psychic sensitivity training or whatever. But in case you hadn't noticed," he gestured to himself with a broad sweep of his arm, "I'm about as psychic as a brick. A very handsome brick, mind you, but still." The professor's tentacles twitched in what might have been amusement or annoyance. Possibly both. "Mr. Davidson, while it's true that humans are not naturally gifted in the psychic arts, your presence here is not without purpose. The Galactic Council, in its infinite wisdom—" Dave snorted. Several students nearest to him recoiled at the strange, aggressive sound. "It is decreed that all sapient species must receive basic training in psychic etiquette and defense. Even those from, how shall we put this, less evolved worlds." "You mean Deathworlds," Dave said flatly. "I prefer the term environmentally challenged," Zilthrop replied smoothly. A tentative tendril of thought brushed against Dave's mind. He turned to see a timid-looking Etherian, its gaseous form shimmering with nervous energy. "We're glad you're here," the thought voice whispered. "Your kind brings excitement." Dave grinned. "Oh, honey, you have no idea." 3 standard cycles later, Dave found himself in the practical portion of the training. The classroom had been reconfigured into a sort of psychic obstacle course, with various stations designed to test and hone one's mental abilities. He stood before a large, pulsating crystal, eyeing it dubiously. "So, what exactly am I supposed to do with this thing?" A willowy sylphid floated over, her voice like wind chimes in a breeze. "This is a basic psychic resonance exercise. Simply place your hands on the crystal and attempt to attune your mind to its frequency. When successful, it should glow with a soft blue light." Dave shrugged. "All right, here goes nothing." He slapped his hands onto the crystal with all the delicacy of a rampaging rhino. The crystal immediately lit up like a supernova, blasting out a psychic shriek that had every being in a 50-meter radius clutching their heads or equivalent sensory organs. Dave, meanwhile, stood unaffected, still touching the now violently vibrating crystal. He said mildly. "Is it supposed to do that?" The sylphid instructor gaped at him, her ethereal form flickering in distress. That's impossible." The crystal should have rejected such an unrefined approach instantly. Dave patted the crystal, which was now emitting a high-pitched whine. "Guess it likes me. We Deathworlders have a way with rocks. Though usually it involves throwing them at things we want to eat." Across the room, Professor Zilthrop massaged his eye stalks wearily. "Mr. Davidson, perhaps we should try a different exercise, one less likely to shatter the sanity of your classmates." "You're the boss." Teach. Dave sauntered away from the crystal, which seemed to slump in relief. The next station featured a delicate-looking contraption that resembled a cross between a dreamcatcher and a particle accelerator. Motes of light danced between intricate, gossamer thin strands. A 4-armed Nexilian stepped forward, its voice a soothing hum. "This device measures the subtle fluctuations in your aura. By focusing your thoughts, you can influence the patterns of light. The goal is to create a harmonious, balanced design." Dave squinted at the device. "So, it's a fancy mood ring." The Nexilian blinked all 6 of its eyes in confusion. I'm not familiar with that term."
Never mind, Dave waved a hand dismissively. Let's fire this baby up.
He closed his eyes and furrowed his brow in an exaggerated expression of concentration. The motes of light began to swirl faster, coalescing into recognizable shapes. The Nexilian leaned in, fascinated. Remarkable. I've never seen such. Wait, is that? Dave opened one eye. Is what? The light motes had formed a perfect replica of an ancient Earth video game, two paddles bouncing a small square ball back and forth. Dave grinned. Guess my aura's feeling a bit retro. The Nexilian's topmost arms gesticulated wildly. But that's not how it works. The patterns should reflect your inner psyche, your deepest emotions. Dave shrugged. What can I say? I'm a simple man with simple tastes. Though if you want to see my deepest emotions, I could try thinking about barbecue instead. Before the flustered instructor could respond, a commotion from across the room drew their attention. A group of students had gathered around one of the meditation pods, chittering and gesticulating excitedly. Professor Zilthrop glided over, his tentacles twitching with curiosity. What seems to be the issue here? A jellyfish like Medusa's own bobbed nervously. It's 6 tick, Professor. They entered the pod for a standard clarity trance, but, well. The professor peered into the pod's transparent canopy. Inside, a chitinous arthroplan lay twitching, its mandibles working furiously as a stream of incomprehensible clicks and whistles filled the air. Great void, Zilthrop muttered. They've entered a hypermanic state. This is most unusual for an arthroplan. Their species is known for their rigidly ordered minds. Dave shouldered his way through the crowd, ignoring the alarmed squeaks from his classmates. What's all the fuss about? Buggy McClickerson having a bad trip. The professor shot him a withering look. Mr. Davidson, this is a delicate situation. 6 tick's mind is in a highly agitated state. Any further stimulation could lead to permanent psychic damage. Dave scratched his chin thoughtfully. Sounds like they need to chill out without warning, he rapped sharply on the pod's canopy. Yo, Jix. Time to wake up and smell the cosmic coffee. A collective gasp rose from the assembled aliens. Professor Zilthrop's tentacles went rigid with shock. Mr. Davidson, what in the name of the eternal void do you think you're? He was cut off as the pod's canopy suddenly flew open. 6 tick sat up, their compound eyes blinking rapidly. When they spoke, their voice was filled with wonder. I saw it. The pattern. The grand design. It all makes sense now. The professor gaped. Impossible. A clarity trance of that magnitude should have taken cycles of preparation and guidance. Dave clapped the still dazed arthroplan on the back, nearly knocking them out of the pod. See? Sometimes you just need a little percussive maintenance. Works on old Earth tech, works on bug brains. 6 tick turned to Dave, mandibles quivering with emotion. Thank you, strange fleshy one. Your barbaric intervention has granted me enlightenment. Don't mention it, Dave grinned. But maybe ease up on the fleshy talk. A guy could get the wrong idea. As the class erupted into excited chatter, Professor Zilthrop sagged against a nearby console. This is unprecedented. In all my cycles of teaching, I'd never seen anything like it. Dave sauntered over, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Looks like you folks might have something to learn from us, less evolved types after all. EA Prof. The professor's eye stalk swiveled to regard the human. There was a long moment of silence before he spoke, his voice a mix of resignation and grudging respect. Perhaps you're right, Mr. Davidson. Though I shudder to think what other lessons you might have in store for us. Dave's grin widened. Oh, teach. We're just getting started. The following days saw a marked shift in the dynamics of the psychic sensitivity training class. Word had spread quickly about the unorthodox human success with Jix Tick, and suddenly Dave found himself the center of attention, much to Professor Zilthrop's chagrin. Now, class, the professor's tentacles waved in exasperation, while Mr. Davidson's unique approach yielded unexpected results in one instance. I must stress that it is not a recommended technique for psychic development. A shy Luminian in the front row raised a glowing appendage. But, Professor, isn't the point of this training to explore new methods of mental interaction? The human's technique, while crude, was undeniably effective. Dave leaned back in his chair, somehow managing to look smug without any discernible change in facial expression. It was a skill he'd honed over years of irritating authority figures. "Yeah, Prof," he drawled. "Don't knock it till you've tried it. Sometimes you need to think outside the box, or give the box a good kick, as the case may be." A ripple of laughter, or what passed for laughter among the varied species, ran through the classroom. Professor Zilthrop's bioluminescent patches pulsed with what might have been a headache. "Very well," he said, with the air of someone regretting their life choices. "Since you're all so eager to explore alternative methods, perhaps Mr. Davidson would care to demonstrate his approach to our next exercise." Dave sat up, suddenly alert. "Now you're talking, Teach. What have you got for me?" The professor gestured to a shimmering curtain of energy at the far end of the room. "This is a psychic barrier designed to test one's mental fortitude and problem-solving abilities. The challenge is to find a way through without disrupting the energy field." Dave cracked his knuckles, eliciting a series of winces from his more sensitive classmates. "All right, let's do this." He approached the barrier, studying it with an intensity that surprised the professor. Just as Zilthrop was about to comment on this uncharacteristic display of focus, Dave took 3 steps back, lowered his shoulder, and charged full tilt at the energy field. "Mr. Davidson." No, Zilthrop's cry came too late. There was a blinding flash, a sound like 1,000 wind chimes being fed into a wood chipper, and then silence. As the spots cleared from everyone's vision or equivalent sensory organs, they saw Dave standing on the other side of the barrier, his hair standing on end, and a manic grin on his face. "Woo," he shouted, pumping his fist in the air. "That'll wake you up in the morning." Professor Zilthrop's eye stalks drooped in disbelief. "But you shouldn't be able to. The energy dispersion alone should have." Dave casually strolled back through the now inactive barrier. "What can I say, Prof? We humans have a saying, if at first you don't succeed, hit it harder." A tentative tendril of thought brushed against Dave's mind. It was the timid Etherian from before. How did it feel? The thought voice was tinged with equal parts fear and fascination. Dave's grin softened a bit. "Like sticking your tongue in a light socket while riding a roller coaster made of pop rocks and lightning. Kinda tingly, mostly awesome." The Etherian's gaseous form shimmered with what might have been excitement. "Fascinating. Your species' resilience is truly remarkable." "Remarkable is one word for it," Professor Zilthrop muttered. "Terrifying and physically improbable are others that come to mind." Dave clapped the professor on what he hoped was a shoulder. "Oh, don't be like that, Teach. Think of it as a learning opportunity. You're always going on about expanding our mental horizons, right?" Zilthrop's tentacles twitched in what might have been a sigh. "I suppose you have a point, Mr. Davidson. Though I fear my curriculum may need significant revision to accommodate your unique approach." As the class buzzed with excitement, Dave found himself surrounded by curious aliens, all eager to learn more about the strange human's methods. The willowy sylphid from earlier floated over, her voice filled with wonder. "Tell us, Dave, how does your species approach psychic development on your homeworld?" Dave scratched his head. "Well, to be honest, most humans don't really believe in psychic stuff. We're more of a seeing is believing kind of species." A collective gasp rose from the assembled students. The crystalline Quartzian, having recovered from their earlier fainting spell, chimed in disbelief. "But how do you communicate complex emotional concepts, or share ancestral memories?" "We use our words," Dave shrugged. "Or interpretive dance, if we're feeling fancy." The Nexilian with 4 arms raised, all of them in excitement. "Ooh, is this interpretive dance a form of ritualistic psychic attunement?" Dave grinned. "Nah, it's mostly just flailing around to music and hoping you look cool. Though I did see a guy pop and lock so hard once that I swear he transcended space and time for a second." The aliens exchanged bewildered looks, clearly trying to process this strange new information. Professor Zilthrop, seeing an opportunity to regain control of his class, cleared his throat, or whatever passed for a throat in his species. While Mr. Davidson's colorful descriptions are certainly enlightening, perhaps we should return to our scheduled exercises. Now, if you'll all turn your attention to the empathy resonance chambers." But it was too late. The floodgates had opened, and the students were peppering Dave with questions faster than he could answer them. "Is it true that humans intentionally consume neurotoxins for pleasure?" "Yep, we call it happy hour." I've heard that your species deliberately exposes itself to harmful radiation for aesthetic purposes. Surely this is an exaggeration. Nope, that's just tanning. Got to get that healthy glow, you know. Is it accurate that humans engage in simulated death experiences as a form of entertainment? Dave blinked. You mean roller coasters? I guess that's one way to look at it. As the barrage of questions continued, Professor Zilthrop found himself both fascinated and deeply concerned. The human's casual attitude towards what most species would consider extreme dangers was illuminating. Mr. Davidson, he interrupted, his voice a mix of curiosity and trepidation. I begin to understand why your species has been classified as originating from a death world. Your daily existence seems to be a continuous series of hazards that would terrify most sentient beings. Dave grinned, a hint of pride in his voice. What can I say, Prof? We humans like to live on the edge. Makes life interesting. A thoughtful expression crossed Zilthrop's features, or at least, Dave assumed it was thoughtful. It was hard to tell with all the writhing tentacles. Perhaps we've been approaching this all wrong. Your species' unique perspective could offer valuable insights into psychic resilience. Dave raised an eyebrow. Come again. The professor's bioluminescent patches pulsed with excitement. Think about it, Mr. Davidson. Your kind has evolved to thrive in an environment that would be lethal to most species. That resilience must extend to the mental realm as well. Dave scratched his chin. Never thought about it that way. We just call it being thick-headed. Zilthrop waved a tentacle dismissively. A crude term for a fascinating adaptation. Tell me, how do humans typically handle mental stress or psychic intrusion? Dave shrugged. We mostly just ignore it. Or crack jokes about it. Sometimes both. The class erupted into a flurry of note-taking and excited chatter. The Medusa Zone student bobbed enthusiastically, its bell-shaped body rippling. Incredible. A passive psychic defense mechanism based on cognitive dissonance and humor. Sure, Dave nodded, pretending he understood what that meant. We're basically talking mental force field generators, powered by sarcasm and bad puns. Professor Zilthrop's eye stalk swiveled rapidly as he processed this information. This could revolutionize our understanding of psychic defenses. Mr. Davidson, would you be willing to assist in some experiments? Dave's grin turned slightly manic. Experiments, you say? Will they be dangerous, potentially traumatic, and likely to void my health insurance? The professor blinked in confusion. I suppose they could be, yes. Is that a problem? Nah, Dave cracked his knuckles. Sounds like a typical Tuesday back home. Let's do this.
The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Word had spread throughout the Galactic Academy of Psionics about the unorthodox human and his bizarre mental resilience. Soon, Dave found himself the subject of intense study by researchers from a dozen different species.
All right, Mr. Davidson, the spindly arachnoid researcher chittered, adjusting a series of complex-looking sensors attached to Dave's head. In this test, we'll be subjecting you to a series of increasingly intense psychic probes. Please inform us immediately if you experience any discomfort or mental distress. Dave, lounging in a chair that looked like a cross between a dentist's nightmare and a modern art installation, gave a thumbs up. You got it, Doc. Hit me with your best shot. The arachnoid nodded and began manipulating a series of glowing controls. Almost immediately, Dave felt a strange pressure in his mind, like someone was trying to squeeze his thoughts through a straw. Feeling anything yet, the researcher asked, eyes fixed on a monitor displaying incomprehensible squiggles. Dave shrugged. Kinda tickles. Reminds me of the time I tried to outdrink a Glaswegian dock worker. The hangover was something else, let me tell you. The arachnoid's mandibles clicked in surprise. Fascinating. We're already at level 3, and you're exhibiting no signs of discomfort. Let's increase the intensity. As the psychic probe ramped up, Dave found himself bombarded with a series of rapid-fire mental images and sensations. Fractal patterns danced across his vision, while tastes and smells he couldn't begin to describe flooded his senses. "Oh," he muttered. "This is trippier than that time I accidentally ate a whole bag of special brownies at a Fish concert." The researcher's legs twitched in excitement. "Incredible. You're processing high-level psychic input without any signs of mental strain. How are you managing this?" Dave grinned lazily. mostly by thinking about bacon and trying to remember the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody. Is this going to take much longer? I'm getting kind of hungry. Before the astonished arachnoid could respond, the door burst open. Professor Zilthrop glided in, his tentacles a blur of agitated motion.
"Stop the experiment immediately," he shouted. "We've made a terrible mistake." The arachnoid researcher scrambled to shut down the equipment. "Professor? What's wrong?"
Zilthrop's eye stalk swiveled wildly. "I've just received word from the Galactic Council. It seems that humans aren't merely resistant to psychic influence, they're psychic null zones." Dave sat up, dislodging several sensors. "Come again. Is that anything like being in a dead zone for cell phones? Because let me tell you, trying to get a signal in the subway is a real pain in the—" No, Zilthrop interrupted. "It means that your species doesn't just resist psychic energy, you absorb and nullify it. The more we probe your mind, the more psychic energy is being drained from the surrounding area." As if on cue, the lights in the lab began to flicker. In the hallway outside, they could hear confused shouts and the sound of various pieces of equipment powering down. The arachnoid researcher's compound eyes widened in alarm. Great Weaver's web. The psychic generators for the entire academy must be affected. Dave stood up, casually peeling off the remaining sensors. "Ha. So you're saying I'm like a psychic black hole? That's pretty metal." Zilthrop's tentacles waved in frantic patterns. "This is no laughing matter, Mr. Davidson. If we don't find a way to contain this effect, you could potentially disrupt the psychic fields of the entire planet." "Or—" "Come on," Dave scoffed. "It can't be that bad. I'm just one guy. How much damage could I possibly—" He was cut off by a sudden, violent tremor that shook the entire building. Alarms began blaring as emergency lights bathed everything in an eerie red glow. "Oh," Dave said sheepishly. "That kind of damage. My bad." Professor Zilthrop sagged against a console, his bioluminescent patches pulsing weakly. "This is a disaster. The Council will have my tentacles for this." Dave patted the despondent alien on what he hoped was a comforting spot. "Buck up, Teach. We'll figure this out. Humans are good at fixing problems. Granted, we're usually fixing problems we caused in the first place, but still." The arachnoid researcher, who had been frantically working at a terminal, suddenly perked up. "Wait, I think I have an idea." Both Dave and Zilthrop turned to her expectantly. "The human's nullifying effect seems to be proportional to the amount of psychic energy directed at him," she explained, her words tumbling out in an excited rush. "What if we could use that as a sort of psychic circuit breaker?" Zilthrop's eye stalks perked up. "Go on." The researcher's legs danced in excitement. "If we could channel the excess psychic energy through Mr. Davidson in a controlled manner, we might be able to stabilize the planet's psychic field." Dave raised a hand. "Quick question, is this likely to cause me to explode, implode, or turn inside out? Because I've got plans this weekend, and I'd hate to cancel on account of sudden molecular rearrangement." The arachnoid and Zilthrop exchanged glances. "It's theoretically possible that there might be some mild discomfort," the professor admitted. "Discomfort as in ate some questionable sushi, or discomfort as in accidentally teleported into the heart of a dying star?" Dave pressed. Another tremor shook the building, this one strong enough to send several pieces of equipment crashing to the floor. Zilthrop's tentacles twisted in what might have been the alien equivalent of throwing up one's hands. "At this point, Mr. Davidson, if we don't try something, we're all going to experience the discomfort of planetary psychic collapse. Are you in or not?" Dave grinned, a manic glint in his eye. "Well, when you put it that way. Let's save the world, baby. Or whatever this planet is called. Psychicville. Mentalopolis, you guys really need to work on your branding." What followed was a frenetic montage of activity that would have made even the most caffeinated engineering student dizzy. Dave found himself at the center of a hastily constructed contraption that looked like the love child of a Tesla coil and a disco ball, surrounded by a team of frantic alien scientists. "All right, Mr. Davidson," Professor Zilthrop called out, his tentacles manipulating a series of complex controls. "When I give the signal, I need you to think about the most mundane, boring thing you can imagine. The duller, the better." Dave nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Got it. So, like my Aunt Edna's slideshow of her trip to the world's largest ball of twine. The arachnoid researcher chittered in confusion. I don't know what any of those words mean, but they sound appropriately mind-numbing. Let's go with that. With a final tremor that threatened to shake the entire lab apart, Zilthrop threw a massive switch. Arcs of crackling energy surged through the makeshift apparatus, converging on Dave in a dazzling light show. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly but surely, the vibrations began to subside. The alarms, which had been blaring non-stop, gradually faded into silence. Zilthrop's eye stalk swiveled rapidly between various monitors. It's working. The planet's psychic field is stabilizing. The assembled aliens let out a collective cheer, or their species equivalent thereof. Dave, still at the center of the energy vortex, managed a weak thumbs up. That's great, folks, he called out, his voice slightly strained. But how long do I need to keep thinking about Aunt Edna's vacation photos? Because I'm pretty sure I'm reaching new levels of boredom that might qualify as cruel and unusual punishment. The arachnoid researcher scrambled to adjust some settings. Just a few more minutes, Mr. Davidson. We need to make sure the field has fully stabilized before we power down. Dave nodded, a glazed look in his eyes. No problem. I'll just be here, contemplating the existential ennui inspired by A. Dave nodded, a glazed look in his eyes. No problem. I'll just be here, contemplating the existential ennui inspired by a series of slightly out-of-focus photos of the world's most underwhelming tourist attraction. No pressure. As the minutes ticked by, the energy surrounding Dave gradually dissipated. The various alien scientists bustled about, checking readings and muttering excitedly to each other in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and psychic impressions. Finally, Professor Zilthrop raised a tentacle triumphantly. We've done it. The planet's psychic field has been fully stabilized. Mr. Davidson, you can stop thinking about whatever it was you were thinking about. Dave slumped in relief, his eyes refocusing on the room around him. Oh, thank God. I was starting to worry I'd permanently damaged my capacity for joy. As the team of researchers helped Dave out of the contraption, a thunderous applause erupted from the doorway. A crowd of students and faculty had gathered, their varied appendages creating a surreal percussion section as they celebrated. 6-Tick, the Arthroplan student from earlier, clicked excitedly. Dave, you've saved us all. Your ability to withstand mind-numbing boredom is truly awe-inspiring. Thanks, Dave grinned weakly. I always knew my talent for zoning out would come in handy someday. My high school teachers would be so proud. Or possibly horrified. It's a toss-up, really. Professor Zilthrop glided over, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with what Dave had come to recognize as a mix of relief and exasperation. Mr. Davidson, I owe you an apology. It seems I severely underestimated both you and your species. Dave waved a hand dismissively. No worries, Prof. We humans are used to being underestimated. Makes it more fun when we inevitably save the day. The professor's eye stalks drooped slightly. Yes, well, about that. The Galactic Council has been in contact, and they have some concerns about the potential implications of your psychic nullification abilities. Dave raised an eyebrow. Let me guess they're worried about an invasion of boring humans disrupting their delicate psychic ecosystem. Zilthrop's tentacles writhed in what might have been embarrassment. Not in so many words. But they have suggested that perhaps it would be best if humans were to limit their involvement in galactic psychic affairs. For the time being. Dave nodded sagely. So we're being politely asked to take our planet and go home. Typical. Save the world once, and suddenly everyone's afraid you'll do it again.
The assembled aliens shifted uncomfortably, but Dave just laughed. Relax, folks, no hard feelings. To be honest, I was getting a little homesick for some good old-fashioned human chaos anyway. This psychic sensitivity stuff is way too sensitive for my tastes.
As the crowd began to disperse, Dave turned to Professor Zilthrop with a mischievous glint in his eye. So, Teach, got time for one last lesson before I head back to my environmentally challenged homeworld. Zilthrop's eye stalks regarded him warily. I suppose. What did you have in mind? Dave's grin widened. I'm thinking it's high time I introduced you all to the fine art of the goodbye party. Earth style. The next morning, or what passed for morning on a planet with 3 suns. The halls of the Galactic Academy of Psionics were uncharacteristically quiet. In the main lecture hall, a ragtag group of aliens in various states of disarray nursed what appeared to be the galaxy's first collective hangover. Professor Zilthrop, his tentacles drooping limply, squinted at a datapad through bleary eye stalks. "I've received a message from the Galactic Council," he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. The assembled aliens winced collectively at the sound. It seems, Zilthrop continued, that upon further reflection, the Council has decided that perhaps humans aren't quite as disruptive to galactic psychic affairs as initially feared. A confused murmur rippled through the room, quickly replaced by a chorus of pained groans. In fact, the professor added, a note of disbelief in his voice, "They've suggested that human resilience and creative problem-solving skills might be a valuable addition to our curriculum." In the back of the room, Dave Davidson leaned against the wall, looking infuriatingly chipper. "Well, would you look at that," he grinned. "Turns out the best psychic defense is a good offensive hangover. Who knew?" As the class erupted into a mix of laughter and pained moans, Dave couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He might not have mastered the art of psychic sensitivity, but he'd managed to teach an entire galaxy of advanced beings the most important human lesson of all sometimes. The best way to expand your mind is to temporarily pickle it. Class dismissed. Zilthrop groaned, his tentacles massaging his throbbing eye stalks. "And Mr. Davidson? Next time you're in this sector of the galaxy, perhaps a bit of advance warning would be appreciated." Dave's laughter echoed through the halls of the Academy as he headed for his ship. The galaxy might not be ready for humans yet, but they'd certainly given it one hell of a first impression. After all, in the grand cosmic scheme of things, what was a little planetary psychic disruption between friends?